It's time for some Christmas cheer on Spotlight on Ayckbourn as I turn my attention to Alan Ayckbourn's earliest plays set during the festive period. I'm Simon Murgatroyd, the playwright's archivist, with your secret Santa of everything you never knew you needed to know about two of Alan's earliest works. These are notable for being his first works for children, his first set at Christmas, as well as having the dubious distinction as being his first major flops as a playwright. In 1959, Alan Ayckbourn made his professional debut as a playwright at the Library Theatre in Scarborough with The Square Cat. This farcical comedy was a big hit, and Alan was immediately commissioned for a second play, Love After All, which premiered during the company's winter season, and it was such a success it was revived the following summer. Alan was on a roll, until the artistic director of the Library Theatre, Stephen Joseph, brought him to an inadvertent standstill by commissioning to work on the Library Theatre's first Christmas show in 1960. At the time, the company's resident writer was David Campton, and he had begun work on an adaptation of Mary Norton's beloved novel, The Borrowers. Stephen suggested the pair of them work on this play together. Alan had no experience of writing for children and soon discovered he was not a natural collaborator either, with David soon leaving Alan to write the piece alone. Alan abandoned The Borrowers' plot and went instead for an original work. At which point Stephen Joseph casually dropped into conversation, "Don't forget the ballet." This was the first that Alan had heard of this, with Stephen explaining it was a co-production with British Dance Drama Theatre and Alan needed to write ballet scenes. Well, Alan pointed out he didn't write for ballet, and Stephen merely said he should. Soon after, Alan discovered that due to a lack of budget, neither company would actually meet until the dress rehearsal. Stumped by how he was going to overcome these problems, Alan wrote a script about a poor family as narrated by the young son. So poor are the family, they dream of their ideal Christmases, which seeg into dreamlike dance sequences, which Alan left the dance company to arrange. The two companies came together the day before performances were due to begin, and the dance sequences were dropped into the play, with any interaction with the actors limited to being pushed and pulled into the appropriate places by the dancers. Alan, who was still acting at this point, took the majority of supporting roles, playing 7 different characters. He famously heard one woman complain, "Not again," when Alan turned up in yet another comedy moustache. The play opened on 19th of December 1960, the theatre having neglected to research the fact that most Christmas shows are dependent on schools, which had already broken up for Christmas. Alan recalls performing to an average of 5 people, average age of about 40. He may be exaggerating, but the fact was it was a disastrous production. The only notable point about the play is the critic Michael Billington once noted it is not only the first Ayckbourn play where a character breaks the fourth wall and speaks directly to the audience, but also it presents a single event from several points of view, which was extraordinarily unusual for any writer at that point in time. After scraping through 2 weeks of performance in Scarborough, Dad's Tale toured to Newcastle-under-Lyme, where it managed a similar lack of success and was never seen again. It's never been produced since, nor published, and has been withdrawn. And yet, it was still a better play and more successful than Christmas v Mastermind. In 1962, Stephen Joseph founded the Victoria Theatre, Stoke-on-Trent, and the majority of the Library Theatre company, including Alan Ayckbourn, left Scarborough and joined Stephen in Stoke. For the debut season, Stephen commissioned Alan to write another Christmas play for children, having apparently learnt none of the lessons from Dad's Tale. The play opened on Boxing Day 1962, having again missed the school trips with very little publicity. This was due to the lack of a publicity budget and also the fact the theatre had only opened in the autumn, by which point most of the theatres had already begun advertising for Christmas. At least Alan didn't have a ballet company to write for. As a result, he went down the obvious Christmas path and created a story centred around industrial action at Santa's workshop and a criminal mastermind's attempt to disrupt Christmas and prevent all the toy deliveries. It's a very odd play, and it's certainly original. It was directed by Peter Cheeseman and was beset by issues. A freak cold spell meant the theatre, which at that point had no heating, was practically sub-zero, and Alan recalls you could see the actor's breath on stage. Meanwhile, the actor Heather Stoney, now Alan's wife, accidentally splashed cleaning fluid in her eye and ended up wearing an eye patch in her role as a fairy secretary to Santa. She recalls dialogue had to be added to explain this, in essence making her a fairy pirate. The play ran for 3 weeks and played to very small audiences. Alan would go on to describe it as the most disastrous play I've ever done. He noted it was all received in dreadful silence and died a death. It was the final time Alan acted in one of his own plays and would signal the beginning of the end of his professional acting career. It almost signalled the end of his writing career too, as his next play was Mr. Whatnot, which famously flopped in London and was received with such biting criticism that Alan joined the BBC as a radio drama producer and considered never writing for theatre again. Fortunately, he did. As for Christmas v Mastermind, its 3-week run was the first and last time it was ever performed. Alan attempted to destroy all copies of the script. There are only 3 believed to still be in existence, and it was never published and immediately withdrawn, although quite who would have wanted to perform it anyway is a mystery. These were Alan's 2 earliest Christmas plays. He would never write again what we would probably consider pantomime-like plays. He wouldn't write another play aimed at younger audiences for 26 years until 1988, at which point he wrote his first play aimed at families, not specifically children, with Mr. A's Amazing Maze plays. It was quite the success and proved he did have the talent to write for children, but on his own terms. This led to a run of what are now dubbed the family plays, between 1988 and 2004, and which are a significant part of the playwright's canon and sadly and unjustly frequently ignored. Yet they often complement the adult plays, for example Woman in Mind and Invisible Friends, Comic Potential and My Sister Sadie, Communicating Doors and Miss Yesterday. They all tackle similar themes, but from different and equally interesting perspectives, and all are brimming with ideas. As for Dad's Tale and Christmas v Mastermind, well, you can at least still read them, as they're both held in archive at both the British Library and in the Ayckbourn Archive at the Borthwick Institute for Archives at the University of York. They'll never be performed again, but you can still read what Alan Ayckbourn considers to be 2 of the worst plays he has ever written. That's it for this Spotlight. I hope you've enjoyed this festive look at 2 very obscure Ayckbourn works. Don't forget to look at the other Spotlights on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Please subscribe, and thanks for supporting the channels. And Happy Christmas.